This is Hockey Talk, where we talk everything hockey. I am John.
And I'm Mike.
All right, Mike, let's go. Now, Mike, last week we talked mainly about keeper league hockey pools, and we went extensively into that subject, and I think there was a need for that, and we went into it quite in depthly. So tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to chat about some individual awards, some team awards, some teams, just to see who we think might come up on top of certain things. So we're going to start off with our first topic tonight. Is going to be some team awards, and we want to know, Mike, who you think is going to win the President's Trophy next year. And that all the President's Trophy is, for anyone that doesn't know, is the end of the regular season. It's the team with the most points. So I'm guessing that there's probably a handful of teams that could possibly win this. Maybe 6 or 7 teams, I guess, that would have a shot at it. The Rangers won it last year, correct? So what do you think? Is it going to be the Rangers again this year?
I actually am going to go this year with the Edmonton Oilers. I think they're going
Really?
to have, yeah, I think they're going to have a great season. They made some good additions in the off season. They made it to the Cup final. I found that the team went better, got better as the season went along. So that's my pick for the President's Trophy this year. Is the Edmonton Oilers.
Okay. Well, since you say the Edmonton Oilers, and I know that this is a part C of one of our questions, but I'll just get it out of the way right now. The Clarence Campbell Trophy is awarded to the Western Conference champion, where the Edmonton Oilers are. So you probably think that they're going to win their, you're
Well,
going to win that
obviously
award.
they would, yeah, have to go with them to win the Campbell Trophy as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, so then what about the Prince of Wales Trophy? That's awarded to the Eastern Conference champions. Last year it was the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
So who do you think is going to win this year?
I believe that it's going to be the New York Rangers.
I see. So they're not going to get enough points to beat Edmonton overall, but they're still going to win the conference.
I think so. I think the East is going to be a little tighter this year than last year. So, because some of the teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, I think improved a lot in the off season. So I think that's going
Right.
to probably, balance out that conference a little bit, so that the teams that finished at the top last year might not have as many points this year, going like for the season.
Okay. So that means that the bottom 3 or 4 teams last year in the Eastern Conference were significantly lower in points than the top four. So you think that's all going to tighten up this year?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not even necessarily the bottom few teams. I think some of those teams that were, finished, 10th, 11th, 12th are going to show some improvement as well. So, um, if they win a little bit more, then, they got to, I don't think the bottom teams are going to lose a ton more than they did last year.
I
So
see.
I think it's
Okay.
more that the top teams from last year will lose a little bit more this year.
All right. And just something I want to throw in here, Mike, is how many Canadian teams do you think are going to make the playoffs next year? Now there's
Uh,
seven
I think
teams.
it's
What do you think?
I think it's going to be the same four as last year:
Okay.
Vancouver, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Toronto. I think those are the four that are going to make it in this year.
Okay. So Montreal fans, Ottawa fans, Calgary fans.
Yeah, yeah.
Better
I
luck
think
next
I
time.
think they're out of luck this year. I'd be surprised. I mean, if I had to pick one of those other Canadian teams that might make a bit of a push, I would have to say probably Ottawa would be, maybe a bubble team, but I, I think they've improved, but I don't know if they've improved enough to get into the playoffs. So we'll have to
Okay.
wait and see.
All right, so let's get into our second topic, and we're going to get into some individual awards. Now, I'm going to list a bunch of them here. Who do you think is going to win the Jack Adams Award? Now, that goes to the Coach of the Year, currently held by Rick Tocchet of the Canucks, one of your favorites.
Yeah, definitely. It's my all-time favorite player was Rick Tocchet. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to win it again this year. I think the Canucks might regress a little bit, but I think they're still good enough to make the playoffs. But I think that it's actually going to be a former Flyer head coach that is going to win this year. And he was good with the Flyers. However, as coaches only have a certain amount of shelf life. So, and that coach is Peter Laviolette, I think,
Ah,
of the Rangers. I think he's going to win Coach of the Year this year.
very nice, very nice. Now, how about the Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy that goes to the top goal scorer of the regular season, currently held by Austin Matthews of my favorite Leafs. What do you think?
I think we're probably going to see a repeat. I don't. I don't see anybody that can really challenge him to take it away. I think there's some guys that are going to make it interesting. I think Pasternak is a good contender. He would probably be my second choice, but I got to go with Austin Matthews again this year. I mean, I just don't see him. I mean, he might not score 69 goals again, but the gap between him and the player that finished second last year was around 10 goals. So I mean, I think I think that it's going to be Matthews to lose again this year.
Okay, and what about the Art Ross Trophy, the player awarded with the most total points in the NHL? Now, it's currently held by Kucherov from Tampa. What do you think?
I think that this one is going to Connor McDavid this year. Uh,
Oh,
I mean, he's the best player. He showed it in the playoffs. If if Edmonton had have won, he would have gotten the MVP. I'm a little surprised. Well, I'm not sorry if they had won. He still got the MVP, I should say. So even though he was on a losing team, and I think that that's going to be enough motivation for him to be even better this year. So I feel fairly confident, barring injury, McDavid is going to win the Art Ross Trophy.
okay. Well, now I think that these other ones, the next three that I have listed here, maybe are a little more difficult. Maybe those are kind of easy, more gimmies.
Yeah.
But we have the Rookie of the Year, the the Calder Trophy. One NHL rookie do you think is going to win this award this year? Now, obviously, last year it was Connor Bedard that won it from the Hawks. What do you think? I think this is a tougher one to call.
It's a little tougher. There's some guys I think that are close, but I am actually going to go with Philadelphia Flyer Matvey Michkov. And it's not just because I'm a Flyers fan. However, I have watched all their preseason games thus far in which he's played, and he's their best player already. And I don't even think it's really that close. He's the most talented guy on the ice for the Flyers. I think he's going to put up a pretty good amount of points this year. Um, so yeah, I mean, if anybody else has watched any of the preseason games and they've watched the Flyers games, I there's no way they could disagree with he is the best player on that team. So um, I'd be surprised if he doesn't lead that team in scoring.
And do you think that
If I had to lean on someone else other than Mitchkov, I would go with probably Logan Stankoven of the Dallas Stars.
okay?
So those he would be my backup pick.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. So the Hart Trophy, awarded to the player judged the most valuable player to their team, is currently held by Nathan McKinnon. Now, I think this is a really tough one to call because this could go. It's not such a defined award. Harder to call it, maybe. What do you think, Mike?
As far as the Hart Trophy goes, it's really tough to not pick McDavid again. Like after the season he had last year, and I don't want to just sound like a broken record of picking McDavid's the best player. Like he clearly is the best player in the league in my opinion, and for him not to get the Hart Trophy, I'd be very surprised. Someone would have to have like a super crazy year, I think, to take that away from him. I think he's, like I said, he's going to be so motivated this year that I just don't think anyone can take it from him. But we'll see what
Okay.
happens. If he gets hurt, different story. However, I clearly think it's his to lose.
Okay. And the last one I have listed here is the Vezina Trophy, awarded to the league's top goaltender. Now, that's currently held by Connor Hellerbuck. He holds this award. I believe that there's some stiff competition here. Mike, who do you think is going to win this award? Do you think it's going to be Hellerbuck again?
No, I don't think it's going to be Hellebuck. I think it's going to come down to two guys. And if I had to pick one today, I would probably pick Igor Shesterkin of the Rangers. Close second would be Jake Ottinger of the Dallas Stars. But I think that, Shesterkin, he's going into a contract year. He wants to get paid. He's
Of
on a
course.
great team. I think the stars have kind of aligned for him, so to speak, to have a great season. So I think that he's probably the front runner. And like I said, I'd give my second choice would probably be Jake Ottinger, but I think this one is for Shosturkin this year.
Okay. All right. Now, I only listed a few awards, Mike. Was there any other ones that you wanted to talk about, or is that good for that subject?
No, I think that pretty much covers, the main ones. I think the only one actually that we didn't talk about would be the Norris Trophy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And if we wanted to talk about that, I would have to probably pick the favorite would be Cale Makar of the Colorado Avalanche. In my opinion, I think he's the best defenseman in the league. Um, he was hurt a little bit last year. However, he still produced like crazy last
He
year, and
did. He
that
did.
top line is so good. I mean, they've got McKinnon, they've got Rantanen. They're going to have Landeskog back at some point, probably this month, possibly, is what the rumors are. So, and I think getting him back out on the ice is going to be really good for the team as well. So, I got to go with Cale Makar when it comes to the Norris Trophy.
Okay. Excellent. So, our third topic for this evening then is there's always a few teams that disappoint and a few teams that surprise. Every year, there's somebody. Could be one team, could be a couple teams. Do you have any insights on who could be tougher, have a harder time making the playoffs this year, and maybe who might squeak in that didn't last year? What do you think?
Yeah. So for teams that I think are going to have a more difficult time, as far as the playoff teams from last year, the ones I think are going to miss this year, I think the LA Kings are going to miss the playoffs. Uh,
Oh, one of our friends is going to be very disappointed by hearing that.
well, that's I think the Drew Doughty injury is really going to hurt them as well. I don't have a lot of confidence in their goaltending,
Right?
so I think LA is going to be the team that misses out. Now, as far as the team that I think might get in that replaces them, I think that might be the Utah Hockey Club. I think that the team has gotten better. They had a lot of younger guys, and I think they're only going to get better. They brought in Sergachev, who's a pretty good defenseman. And the move to Utah, I think, is going to be helpful to them. They're clearly going to have sold out crowds there. So I
Mm-hmm.
think Utah
Yes.
could be the team that takes LA's spot in the Western Conference. As far as the Eastern Conference goes, I think the team that's going to have a hard time is going to be. There's two teams that made the playoffs last year that I think have the chance of missing this year: the New York Islanders and the Washington Capitals. I think those two teams are going to be on the bubble to get in. Now, as far as teams that could get in to replace them, I think that New Jersey is going to make the playoffs this year, and they're not really not like a non-favorite. I think a lot of people think that they're going to make the playoffs this year, so that one shouldn't be too surprising. And the other team that potentially could get in as a wild card spot might be the Buffalo Sabres. I think the Sabres are a team on the rise. They get a lot of good young players, um, but if they don't get in, I mean, one of the two teams of either the Islanders or the Capitals might squeak in. Capitals did really well in the offseason, so I know they're really trying to get into the playoffs for Ovechkin's, year where they want to see him break Gretzky's goal record. So we'll see what happens there. But the East is a little tighter, I find, than maybe the West a little bit because I think the Senators improved their team as well. They should be better. So there's a few teams that are right on the bubble. We'll see what kind of breaks they get through the season.
Okay, and we'll have to look back at all these predictions to see when we do our end of the year review. We'll have to see how we did in these. So
Maybe we'll do like a mid-year review to see where we're at too.
yeah,
So
that's a good idea. That's a great
yeah, for
idea.
sure.
So now I've got listed here as our fourth topic about another question about Canadian teams. I should have put the two Canadian team questions together, but whatever, I messed it up. But what Canadian team do you think is going to be the most shocking team this year? Now, either shocking as in way better than expected or way worse than expected.
Well, I'm going to give you one of each. And I think the team that's going to be better, and it may not be necessarily shocking, but I think that the Ottawa Senators, as I said, are going to be a better team. Um, they've got a new coach, they've got a new number one goalie that I think is actually a capable number one goalie in
They
Allmark.
need that.
Definitely. Like Corpusalo is just not the answer. And I think the Bruins are going to find that out there if they don't get Swayman signed. Um, so I think Ottawa is going to be a better team. As far as a team that I think is going to be a little bit worse, I think it's going to be the Vancouver Canucks. Not that I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but if we had looked back last year at the start of the season, I don't think many people would have put Vancouver in the position where they actually finished last year. So I
Right.
think possibly they overachieved a little bit last year, and I think this year they're going to probably take a little bit of a step back. Still going to make the playoffs, but the key thing for them is the situation with Thatcher Demko, because they're not really giving out any information at all on the extent of his injury, when he's going to be back, when he's going to be practicing or anything like that. So they're keeping it pretty quiet. So it's who knows what's going to happen there.
So pretty much like I was asking about, most shocking team either way, you're pretty much saying that the Canadian teams are going to, stay pretty much the same. Yeah, a little up, a little down, but nothing really shocking. Like the worst teams are not going to get really great all of a sudden, and the really good teams are not going to get terrible all of a sudden.
I don't think so. I mean, I think Calgary is going to be a little bit worse as well, and with them being worse, I think the Oilers are going to be better. So I'm not.
Okay.
I don't think that you're going to see any huge difference in points. I mean, other than the fact that I think the Oilers are going to be like a lot better, because I mean they struggled out of the gate last year by losing so many games, and then they turned the season around after the first month. So I don't think they're going to fall into that trap again this year. So
Right, right. I never quite seen anything like that as what the Oilers did last year. I know St. Louis, the year they won the cup,
right, yeah,
their first half was really bad and their second half was fantastic. But I think
yeah.
even the Oilers, I think they beat that. It was their first month was just awful. But okay, so let's go into the fifth topic, Mike. Let's talk a little bit about NHL divisions, and we're just going to predict who you think will win the four divisions in the NHL. I think this is going to be tough because there's 8 teams in each division. There's a lot of picks here. You might also want to say what team you think is going to do the worst in that division if you have an idea of who it could be, which it's going to be difficult. So let's start with the Atlantic Division. Current Stanley Cup champions are in the Atlantic Division, the Florida Panthers. Who do you think is going to come out on top here?
In the Atlantic, I think that the winner of that division is going to be Florida once again.
Okay,
Um, I They did take a little bit of a hit with some players leaving. I don't think the teams that were behind them took huge step forwards. I mean, the Leafs I think did a little bit better, but I think the goaltending is a bit of a question mark with Toronto. So
right.
um,
Always.
yeah, so I mean, I don't think that they improved enough to overtake Florida. Tampa Bay, I think, is probably going to be a little bit better than they were last year, only because Vasilevsky's going to have the full season. Starting off last year, he missed the first month and a half, so I think Tampa will be a little bit better. And I don't think Boston improved a ton to overtake Florida either. So those were the teams that I think are going to be the contenders in the Atlantic Division. But I think Florida is still probably the team to beat.
Okay. Well,
Um,
the oh
sorry,
no,
if
go
you wanted
ahead.
to talk about who I thought is going to finish at the bottom of
Yes.
the Atlantic,
Yes.
um, I know some Montreal fans aren't going to like my answer, but I think it's the Montreal Canadiens are going to finish last. This Patrick Laine injury didn't help them whatsoever because I thought he was actually going to have a decent year, but now he's out 2 to 3 months, so that's going to kind of put them behind the eight ball. And they're still a pretty young team. So, I'm not trying to disrespect the Canadians. It's just there's everybody knows that they're a rebuilding team right now. So, and the teams that are ahead of them in that division that were ahead of them last year, I think are still going to be ahead of them this year.
Okay. Okay. So the other Eastern Conference Division team is the Metropolitan Division, and who do you think is going to come out on top here, Mike?
I think the New York Rangers are going to win that division. I think they're going to get some competition from Carolina and potentially New Jersey for that top spot. But I think the Rangers are going to hold off and win that division. So it's theirs to lose. They've got the goaltending. They've got some good defensemen. They got Fox is great. Their forward lines are very good. They got two high end scoring lines. So their second line could be, first line on some other NHL teams. So I think the Rangers have a good balance of depth. So I think that's theirs to lose. If we're looking at the worst team in that division, and I think that unfortunately this is a team that's going to contend for the worst spot in the NHL, is the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Oh,
Um, Very little scoring up front. The defense is, they've got Werenski, but after that, it's kind of slim pickings for defense there, and the goaltending is could be the worst in the league. I mean, they're going to battle with San Jose, I think, there for that bottom spot this year. So I think that unfortunately Columbus is going to be the team that finishes last, and I I I dare find anybody that would probably argue that one with me. So
okay, that's good. Well, to the West we go. Now, I have on my list here the Pacific Division, and I'm sure you're going to pick the Edmonton Oilers to win this division. I'd be shocked if you didn't.
yeah.
So maybe you could just say who you think is going to finish last in this division.
All right. So, yeah, obviously, I think the Oilers are going to finish first. For the team that's going to finish last, man, it's going to be a battle, I think, for that last spot because there's three teams in contention. Um, Calgary, I think, is a contender for that last spot, Anaheim, and San Jose. So, I think it's going to be close between those three. Maybe give Calgary a little bit of an edge to finish higher, I guess, because they still have some guys that are on the up front that are experienced, whereas the other teams are generally younger. Uh, Geez, it's tough. If I have to pick today, oh boys, I'd have to probably say San Jose, but like I said, I think it's going to be a competition between the three of them. So if I got to pick today, I'll say San Jose, and only because I think that they're the youngest team in that group. So
Right, right. Well, Anaheim is their players are starting to get a little bit older. They've had a few. Some of them have had a few seasons under their
yeah,
belt. So San Jose is really bad. We'll see what
they are,
happens.
but
It's
I mean, they
tough,
do. They have some really good young players, but I think that
right?
they're just a year or two away. Which it's going to hurt them just because they're so young. The team is very young. So, I mean, Logan Couture is like twice the age of some of these guys. I think pretty
Yes.
close, anyways. And he's their, and he's supposed to be back this year, but he's always a potential injury risk, just because he's a little older now. So,
Right.
yeah, if I was picking today, I got to pick San Jose, I guess.
Well, the final division is the Central Division, Mike. What do you think of the Central Division?
The Central I find is going to be a battle for that top spot. It's going to be really close between Dallas, Colorado, and Nashville. I think those are the three contenders for that division. Nashville improved a ton. Um, they could finish first. Um, I would say that they're not probably my favorite. My favorite would be Dallas, but Nashville's right up there. Colorado's always a threat. The thing with Colorado is, when we're looking at those three teams, Dallas, Nashville, and Colorado, uh, Colorado's got the weakest goaltending, in my opinion. Um, but with that being said, their defense is comparable with Dallas. Um, the forwards comparable with Dallas, but I find Dallas has a little more depth, and that's the only thing with that. So I'll go with Dallas, but it could be Colorado or Nashville as well. They're both pretty strong teams, so I'll give the nod to Dallas to squeak it out. And as
Okay.
far as the worst team in that division, it looks like the Chicago Blackhawks again.
Oh man, I was hoping you weren't going to say that, Mike.
Well, I think they've improved. However, I don't think they've improved enough to get past, Minnesota, St. Louis, and like I said, I think Utah is going to be a challenger here this year. So I think they've improved. So yeah, I just don't see Chicago being better than Minnesota and St. Louis. So unfortunately, I think they're going to be better, but not not good enough. Which is
So,
goes in their favor going into the draft, I guess, next year.
so that must mean no 100 points for Taylor Hall.
And yeah, I just unless he can dial the clock back 10 years, I don't see it happening. Uh, and It's funny you bring up Taylor Hall. We did one of our hockey pools there this past Sunday night, and he just didn't get picked. So maybe some of the listeners there were in the pool and they listened to some good advice, perhaps.
I think so. I think we have some of your hockey pool people that are in your
Yeah,
hockey pools or in the hockey
yeah,
pools you're in listening, so they can get all that astute information and not pick who they shouldn't pick. So that's why you didn't get picked. So
yeah.
maybe you shouldn't have said anything about it, and then he would have been picked. But oh well, that's okay. It's okay. So I'm just going to ask you this. I know this is a long ways off. I mean, you've talked about the Rangers and you've talked about Edmonton. Who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup, Mike?
I think it's the Oilers. After the way they came back in that final last year against Florida, after those first three games, I'm like, this is over in four. Like, there's no way that they're going to come back, and they came back to make it a 7-game series. So, getting so close and just not being able to, finish it off, I think is really going to be motivating for that team. Um, and I'll be honest with you, I I felt last year that when they fired the coach that they had, um, that was the turning point right there. Um, I don't know what specifically, other than that, could have turned that team around the way it did, other than that coaching change. So I think that was a key move last year, and I think that the coach is going to let these guys play the style that they played, and I feel they're the favorite because of it. So I think the Oilers are the team to beat. As much as I would like to say the Florida Panthers, because in the East, I mean, other than my Flyers, I really like the Florida Panthers, but I think that it's going to be tough for them to repeat because they took a few hits with some players that they lost. And so that's why I think the Rangers are probably going to be the team out of the East this year. Um, and the Rangers are pretty solid. So I think it's going to be Edmonton versus the Rangers with the Oilers winning. It should be a close series, though.
Okay, excellent. Now, I know that I say in the intro that we talk everything hockey, and I'm going to make an exception to that rule. And I'm just going to mention that Mike's favorite New York Mets are in the playoffs this year. and they're playing against the Milwaukee Brewers. They already won their game last night, so they're up 1-0. It's a best of 3 series, right? Isn't that correct, Mike? Or is it
I
5?
think it is. I think it's best of three.
Best of
Yeah,
3.
for
Yeah,
the
I
wild
believe
card
it's best of
round.
3.
Yeah.
And they play
So
tonight, so it could be over for. They could advance tonight.
let's hope so. I mean, they got in on the last day of the season, and it was quite the game there against Atlanta. They
I
were
saw it.
losing, and then they came back and took the lead, and then they gave it up again in the eighth inning, and then they took the lead again in the ninth. I'm like, holy jeez. So, and I mean, I can't stand the Atlanta Braves. They drive any Mets fan, they drive them crazy. So, to come out of Atlanta, getting the win, getting into the playoffs, um, and I figured, they're gonna have the hands full with Milwaukee because Milwaukee's a pretty solid team. But I think if the Mets are going to win this series, I think they got to win this game tonight. I don't like I don't like seeing them go to a third game because then anything can happen. So
Right.
hopefully they can pull it out tonight, and yeah, we'll go from there. So, but yeah, if you had told me the Mets were gonna, well, I mean, I think we did discuss this way
We
earlier in the
did.
season about the Mets making the playoffs, and I'm like, they've got no chance. They're At the time they were like 11 games below 500,
Yeah.
and it's not often that a team's going to come back from that. But you know what? Maybe they'll be the Edmonton Oilers of baseball this year, and it'd be nice.
It
Uh,
would be very nice for you, I'm sure. I just thought I would mention that because I saw they make the playoffs. I do follow them since I know you're a big fan. So, and I saw
yeah,
they had made it. So, on the last day of the season, which is pretty cool. So,
yeah.
but Mike, is there anything else that you wanted to go over tonight before we call it the end of the episode?
No, I think that pretty much covers everything. So, um, yeah, I mean, next week we'll have to come up with some new ideas and stuff. Maybe I've got a couple more hockey pools this week, so once I've got those finished up there, maybe we'll talk a little bit more of some sleeper picks in the hockey pools and stuff because I have a few more. I didn't want to give them all up there because I know a couple of the guys that are in my pool listen, and I didn't want them to know everybody that I wanted to pick. So um, we can talk a little bit more about that as well next week.
Okay, excellent. Well, folks, sound off in the comment section below. That's what it's for. Like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Later.
See you later.